Oh, 12 o'clock on your Tuesday afternoon now. Welcome in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Ed, Captain Dave. Not flying solo. We're a tag team today instead of a triple threat. Bill Gunner out today. He'll be back in tomorrow, I guess maybe after everything we had to unpack yesterday with Lost A&M. He just needed a chance to breathe a little bit, which understandable, and appreciate everybody that weighed in yesterday. The AAA near phone lines and Firehouse Subs text line is I feel like it was good for all of us, right? Kind of act as a therapy session of sorts to get everything off your chest of how you're feeling about not only the loss, but the direction of the program and all those kind of things. And there's more of that that I'm going to get into on today's show. We obviously have Beamer coming up in an hour for his usual Tuesday press conference. I'm interested to see what kind of mood he's in, right? We joke about it a lot that, you know, after a loss, like Beamer, very down, very, very down in the dumps immediately after the game, as you would expect a lot of coaches to be. Kind of similar vibes in his Sunday teleconference where you can tell that he's spent the entire day watching the film of what went wrong the day before, and it's just aggravating him. But usually by Tuesday, it's where that mood kind of ticks up a little bit, joking, laughing a little bit, you know, kind of back to being Beamer as normal. Now, how that is after a historic loss like Saturday, we'll have to see. But I would kind of expect it to be the usual Tuesday Beamer coming up today, and if not, we'll certainly talk about that, you know, later on in the show. Captain Dave, you were out yesterday. You didn't get to enjoy the chaos of unpacking the loss. How you doing? How did you experience Saturday? You got to listen to Todd and Tommy the entire time. How did their emotions change throughout that game?
Well, they were elated, you know, the first half.
Sure.
Like we all were.
Sure.
And then the second half, of course, they start pointing out a few things that are starting to go not correct, I should say. And that, you know, Texas A&M coming back. And you can actually see it. I think by the time Texas A&M scored that 17, when they were at 17, I think it was just the whole mood changed with them and with the fan base too. Yeah,
definitely with the fan base. And we're out there at O'Hara's on Saturday. And again, I appreciate everybody that came out and hung out with us. It was a full house. I mean, that place was packed. You know, shows how loyal this fan base is for people that want to come out and watch a 3-6 team in a game that everybody assumed was going to be a beatdown, right? A game that you probably weren't going to be close in a lot of people's minds. And again, everybody hung out there, and most people stayed the entire game. And unfortunately, it did not go the way that we ultimately wanted it to. And again, yesterday, what you guys said and your frustration is all justified. There's nothing that you can feel about this team right now from a negative standpoint that I'm going to sit here and tell you you're absolutely wrong about, right? Because we expect more. And I'm going to get into some more of Beamer's post-game thoughts on Saturday and pick them apart a little bit as to why the fan base is as frustrated as they are. And again, we'll see what, if any, kind of messaging he has coming up in the next hour. You know, for his usual Tuesday presser, I scrolled Twitter about 5 minutes ago, and I saw people that were already, you know, complaining about the state playoff moniker that he was putting around these next two games against Coastal and Clemson, saying, that's cheesy, that's hokey, whatever. My thing is, I said this earlier, if that's what you need to motivate your team, okay, that's fine. You don't have a bowl game that you're shooting for anymore. You still have the ability to beat your rival, which is always going to matter, especially in a rivalry game like, you know, South Carolina and Clemson. But if you need a little more juice to get these guys up, get these guys ready, now that they're not playing for a postseason at this point, it's whatever. It's fine. I'm not going to hold that against them. Now, yes, in the grand scheme of things, when you couple that with the loss on Saturday and the conversations and narratives around South Carolina football, yeah, that does seem kind of cheesy, and I can understand why people are poking apart. I didn't have a personal problem with it, but, you know, everybody certainly entitled to their own opinion. If you're looking for more positives when it comes to Gamecock sports, basketball, women's basketball, didn't really even talk about it much yesterday, in action on Saturday night. The Battle of the Real USC, which they go out there and pick up the victory. So Dawn Screw stays undefeated on the season so far. So that was good to see. And maybe, I don't know, maybe more of you weren't necessarily planning to watch it, but, you know, because it was a full Saturday of college football, a lot of big games like Georgia and in Texas going on. But when you kind of get kicked in the gut like you did on Saturday afternoon, you know, what ended about 3:30, maybe you didn't want to watch college football the rest of the day and you were fully locked in on what Dawn's crew was doing out there against the Trojans of Southern Cal. Of course, this game didn't quite have the same marquee we had hoped for when it was announced, with Juju Watkins and Chloe Kitts and Ashlyn Watkins and all these big names that we thought were going to be playing in this game that just weren't. But still, great win for Dawn's crew. Men's basketball in action tonight is the take on Radford over at Colonial Life Arena. Pregame coverage starts at 6:30. Tip-off at 7. Here on the game, as Dawn, again, Longmont Pierce's crew, basically with the week off. It's been since last Wednesday when they played their last game against Presbyterian. So a few extra days rest before they head off to West Virginia this upcoming weekend. That's another thing, too. If you're looking for things to maybe distract you from Gamecock football a little bit, you do have men's basketball playing Friday afternoon and then Sunday afternoon out there in the Greenbrier tournament up there in West Virginia. Jack Veltri will be up there covering that for Gamecock Central, and we'll talk to him about that a little bit later on in the week as well. But if you're looking for reprieve and things to make you happy that aren't Gamecock football related, at least you can look at what the two basketball teams have done so far this season. Obviously tonight as well, I just looked it up earlier. So this is the night where they do the Champions Classic thing. So the playoff rankings won't be revealed at 7 o'clock like normal. They'll be revealed at 8:30, basically at halftime, or not halftime, the break between the two games, and we'll find out who's going where in the newest college football playoff top 25. We did not get as much chaos as maybe we thought, and my goodness, if Carolina had beaten Texas A&M, A&M still probably has a really good shot at making the playoff, because at worst, they're probably going to be a 10-2 team, though losing to Carolina and losing to Texas would have put them out of the SEC championship game. At least would have had an interesting conversation about, okay, how far do you drop Texas A&M? What do you do with them and all this kind of stuff against what, hey, it's a bad loss. It would have been to South Carolina. How do you view that? Obviously, the committee doesn't have to make that decision. And if anything, I do wonder, how do you give them props for the comeback, or do you hold it against them that they were down by 4 touchdowns to a 3-6 team? I'd lean towards the former, because again, at the end of the day, the end result is all that matters, and that was a historic, remarkable comeback. I don't think it's anything to jump them into the top 2 necessarily, because again, Carolina's not a ranked team or a team with a winning record at this point in time. But I think A&M is probably not gonna move. I think everybody else kind of slides up a spot with Alabama losing to Oklahoma. Where Oklahoma goes, because they got to be in front of Alabama, right? You can't put Oklahoma behind Alabama after they just won the head-to-head. With Alabama having a worse loss in Florida State than the 2 losses that Oklahoma has with Ole Miss and Texas. So it's going to be interesting to see how the committee decides to do that, and where's Texas go, right? Well, how far does Texas fall after getting dominated by Georgia, right? That was the 25-point game. And one where when it seemed like Texas had a little spark of something, Georgia immediately flattens it with a touchdown, onside kick, another touchdown. And at that point, the game's basically over. So going to be interesting to see how all that ends up playing out later on tonight, 8:30, ESPN for, the rankings reveal there. Also, and we'll get into this with Michael Felder coming up a little bit later on in this hour. And then we had a conversation with John Bryce of footballscoop.com earlier on this morning. I'll re-rack that conversation coming up in the 2 o'clock hour as well about this crazy coaching carousel in college football, which, it's already been crazy, right? But now things that, are or outside of maybe our realm of thinking are starting to not happen yet, but starting to set up to happen. And what I'm talking about, of course, is Lane Kiffin, who is coaching a team that I fully expect to be number 6 in tonight's college football playoff poll. They're 10-1 right now. They have a bye this weekend. They won't play again. And so the Egg Bowl coming up next Friday, and there's a realistic chance that Lane Kiffin may not even coach that game. How insane is that? To think that there's a coach on the cusp of making the program's first ever college football playoff appearance, and realistically, he could not be on the sidelines for their last game of the regular season, and obviously not a playoff run either. But that kind of seems to be the conundrum that Ole Miss is facing, where they've apparently given him an ultimatum where it's hey, we know you're flirting with LSU. We know you're flirting with Florida. You got to tell us what you're doing. And I understand where they're coming from, especially with what the college football calendar is as of right now, where you get into December, boom, first week, you've got early signing day, which is just become National Signing Day at this point, right? Then you have the transfer portal, the one portal window open. It's an important thing to remember. There's not a December window. There's not an April window. There is one 10-day portal window open for most programs. Yes, if you play deeper into the postseason, you'll get a little like 5-day caveat or whatever. But for 99% of programs, portal window is open for you on January 2nd and runs through the 12th. And if Ole Miss wants to be successful next year, guess what? They need to know who their head coach is on December 3rd to sign all the early signees. And they need to know who their head coach is on January 2nd when the portal opens, so you start positioning yourself for the next season. Same thing with LSU and Florida, who are obviously trying their hardest to get him to come there, to the point where they've apparently flown out his family. And John Bryce even told us 2 hours ago that there was word that Kiffin was even on the flight to Gainesville on Sunday to check it out himself. And again, the story with all this is one of the reasons why Lane Kiffin was projected to stay at Ole Miss was that he seemed to have gotten all of his family stuff straightened out. He's got his kids there. His ex-wife, of course, the mother of the children, is there as well. His son goes to the local high school, and he's being recruited as a quarterback. It seemed like all that was perfect for Lane Kiffin, but family's like, hey, we really love Gainesville, or we really love Baton Rouge. Let's go. Maybe he goes. And again, this is one of those things that you can read some insiders that say he's going to stay, some insiders say he's going to go, some insiders that throw their hands up and say, I have no clue what's going to happen. It's all inside Lane's head. Nobody knows at this point in time what Lane is going to do except for Lane Kiffin. And that could change day to day. That could change hour to hour. That could change minute to minute as of right now. But we could potentially see an Ole Miss team heading into their first playoff be derailed by their coach leaving for a different job. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but my goodness, is this story interesting. And that's what makes college football the most unhinged and entertaining sport, that ridiculous things like this happen, and we just all kind of accept it, right? It's what makes the sport wacky, wonderful, and beautiful at the same time. We'll get into more of what Coach Beamer had to say after Saturday's game, and a message that I feel is wearing pretty thin on this fan base. We'll discuss that coming up next. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Captain Dave, tag teaming today. No Bill Gunser. He'll be back tomorrow on your Tuesday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. Halftime show. Tyred Captain Dave. I said earlier we're tag teaming today because Bill Gunner's not here. He'll be back in tomorrow. Dave, if we were a tag team, what would our tag team name be?
Road Warriors 2, because I loved the Road Warriors back in the day.
Oh, yeah, with spiked shoulder pads. Ooh, what a rush. Yeah, Road Warrior Hawk, Road Warrior Animal, legends, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you wanna be the second iteration of a classic tag team, or do you want to be something original? Because they did Road Warriors 2000.
They did,
which was like a second. They had several iterations of it. They had Road Warrior Animal with Heidenreich, Road Warrior Animal with somebody else back in the 2000s. It didn't work. It was trying to be something it wasn't, and nothing beats the original.
we could be Road Warrior 3000 with Andre 3000.
You know what? I like that. He could play his flute on our way to the ring.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Give us tag team name suggestions. Firehouse Subs text line 803-404-6100. I might read some of those a little bit later on in the show. Obviously, Saturday's loss sucked. There's no two ways about that. You have a historical collapse against the number 3 team in the country when all eyes had turned to you, right? That was a game that most people outside of the Gamecock or Aggie fan bubble probably didn't have on their viewing guide for the weekend. But as you're watching other games, you look down at that little score ticker at the bottom of ESPN and be like, wait a minute, Carolina's leading by 27 points over A&M. Let me flip over there and see what's happening. And then they tuned in to see the historical collapse that Carolina had. And look, there's nothing you can say after a game like that as a head coach. It's going to make the fan base feel better. But there is one consistent message that Beamer has been giving that I know is really starting to wear thin on people. Let's hear what he had to say after the game. That'll be cut number 29 from yesterday.
So much really, really good. And we showed in the first half the team that we, in my mind, are in so many ways, but just haven't been consistently that team. And we showed how close we are. And I've been on the phone with a bunch of recruits this afternoon, and not to predict games, but say there's a pretty strong likelihood that Alabama and Texas A&M are going to play for the SEC championship. And we led both of those teams going into the fourth quarter. And just we're in the game, certainly, with those guys going into the fourth quarter for sure on that one.
And it's that thing of we're so close, right? And I'm a believer that two things can be true at the same time. Beamer's not wrong. They are close, right? It's not like they're getting blown out in these games. If you would have lost to Alabama by 40 points, lost to A&M by 45, lost to Missouri by 35, then we're not saying this. You're saying, no, you're light years away from where you need to be. So he's right. They are close in these games, obviously not getting the job done. But at the same time, the other thing that's true about this is the fan base is right for being frustrated that is not good enough. And that stems from you were there last year, right? You on this 6-game winning streak to end the season. You were sitting there at 3-3. And we were all kind of like, ooh, okay, which way this season's going to go? And you turned it on in the final 6 games and went on a run that we're going to talk about for a very long time here in the history of Carolina football. And in that winning streak, you had close games that you won. You came back against Missouri. You came back against Clemson. You obliterated A&M in the second half, as Beamer referenced after the first quarter on Saturday. You weren't close. You were there. You were winning these games. You were closing these games out. You weren't folding in the second half. You were putting together 4 full quarters of football, and now you're not. And that's where the frustration from the fan base comes in. It's like, okay, if you're giving the message of we're close in year number 2, right? When you're trying to continue to build things up from where Muschamp had left this thing, okay, that's one thing. And people say, all right, yeah, you're trending in the right direction. When you take a step back from the prior year, one of the best years in program history, and you start saying we're close, that's where people get annoyed, and that's where people start to, quite frankly, turn on you, right? Look, there's been many ups and downs of the Beamer tenure so far. this is the most negative I've ever seen the fan base towards him. I don't see a whole lot of people coming out in support of him right now. And I get it. Social media message boards are just a mere snapshot and typically show the most vocally frustrated people within a fan base. But still, those are fans, and those thoughts and feelings are very real. And again, when you comb through enough of it, you don't see a ton of support for what Beamer's doing. As right now, doesn't mean everybody feels that way. There are some people that are supporting Beamer and saying there's nothing wrong and all that kind of stuff, and you're entitled to your own opinion. But the majority opinion right now is this is not good enough. And hearing we're so close over and over again is making people, quite frankly, probably want to beat their head against the wall. You know what I mean? And I understand it. Because the last thing you want to hear when, again, you had this historical year that set you up for what was supposed to be an even better year, if not an even better year, a year where the regression wasn't much, right? And I said before the season started, I thought this team was probably going to go 8-4, right? I looked at the talent that you lost, looked at your tough schedule, and I said, as much as I would love for them to go on a crazy run and make the playoff and all that kind of stuff, I didn't see it in the cards, but I didn't see this either. I didn't see 3-6. I didn't see, at best a 5-7 year and at worst a 3-9 year, right? Nobody predicted that coming. Nobody nationally, nobody locally, nobody saw this kind of collapse happening. And when you're, again, repeatedly being told, oh, we're so close, and yes, you're right. Again, you're not getting blown out. You're in these games. You had a lead on Missouri in the fourth quarter. You had a lead against Alabama in the fourth quarter. You were within a score of LSU in the fourth quarter. You obviously had the lead in the fourth quarter on Saturday as well. And none of those ended up being wins. And as we sit here right now on Tuesday, November the 18th, your last win was almost 2 months ago. Now, you hope that is no longer the case this weekend by beating Coastal. Not that really changed anybody's opinions of what this team is as of right now, but it at least gets some kind of win in the win column that gets the stink of this near 2-month losing streak partially gone, at least for a moment, right? Gives you a moment to be happy and excited if you're out there at Willie B and all that kind of stuff, and then we can go back to talking about the future and what happens next and all those kind of things, because this has kind of become a truly year-to-year program at the end of the day, and that's not always a bad thing. That can give you optimism going into a season like next year, because say, okay, well, if you get the coordinator hire right, you get good guys in the transfer portal, boom, you're right back to being a team that could win 8, 9, maybe 10 games coming up next year. But at the same time, when you come off of a season like last year and okay, well, if we don't get the portal guys right, if the coordinator hire isn't right, we can go back to being a 3 or 4 win team or whatever it may be. Like, it's a tough existence to live as a Gamecock football fan, which, again, I go back to all your thoughts you've shared yesterday and today with us. AAA Heat and Air phone lines, Fire Subs text line, all justified. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong for feeling the way that you want to feel about this team. Again, I always circle back to, I don't think Beamer's going anywhere. Now, yeah, you lose to Coastal and Clemson, we can have a different conversation, right? But at this point in time, I expect Beamer to be the head coach in 2026. So I'm looking at it from, okay, if that's going to be the case, what has to happen next? Which we're still figuring that out. But I understand your frustration, and it's very, very much justified. There are plenty of other things happening around the college football world, as I alluded to a moment ago. Our guy Michael Feld, we're going to check in with us coming up next, and we'll chat some college football with him as the halftime show rolls along. Tyler Ed and Captain Dave on your Tuesday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyrod, Captain Dave with you here on your Tuesday on the game. Let's talk some college football with our guy Michael Felder joining us now on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Michael, what's happening, man?
Hey, man, just trying to make things shake. How you doing?
Same thing, man. Enjoy you being on as always. You're outside of this bubble of Columbia, so I'll ask you, what was your perspective of how things went down on Saturday in the historic second-half collapse for Carolina?
I mean, I'm from North Carolina, so we just call y'all South Carolina.
Yeah, but, I know. We get into that conversation every time we have you on.
But no, I think the reality is A&M just bubbled up. Like, to me, it said less about South Carolina because South Carolina's not as good a football team as A&M. But what it said to me is that A&M, just like we saw, think about this. What, 2 Saturdays ago, what did we see? We saw Penn State go down to Indiana, and we saw Oregon rise up and make sure they were able to finish the drill. I think that was A&M showing that they're able to finish the drill.
Yep.
So it's not a knock on South Carolina. I thought they played a heck of a football game. I think A&M just realized if we're going to be for real in this, we got to go through and finish the drill.
I thought Elko's comments yesterday when asked about, how they won that game, if he had a rah-rah speech at halftime where he basically said, we won that game 6 months ago with our off-season conditioning, winter workouts,
yes,
those kind of things. I think you can kind of look at that on both sides of the coin. That's why A&M lost, and maybe that's why Carolina or A&M won, and maybe that's why Carolina lost, because what they did in the offseason maybe it wasn't enough to be able to sustain what they had done in that first half. And again, we haven't seen them play a great 4 quarters of football basically this entire season. So I think a comment like that is probably telling on both sides.
Yeah, it's a 60-minute football game. And you listen, whatever you do in 30 minutes is nice, but at the end of the day, you got 30 more minutes to go. And it's like, I don't know, do you have like brothers or sisters?
I have an older sister, yes.
You got an older sister, and
yep,
she used to beat the wheels off you until you were able to get your conditioning right, and then all of a sudden she didn't want to mess with you no more.
Sure.
So it's the same thing, and A&M, I think they stumbled out of the gate. They slut-walked early. Reed wasn't as crisp as he probably should have been. I mean, and for both teams, the amount of drops was insane. Just guys getting the ball hit them in their hands and they couldn't catch it. And then A&M decided we need to tighten up. I will say this. I hope this gets back to him. I hope he hears it. Nick Harbor is an absolute dog, man. Like, what an absolute monster. I know he was hurt. We all saw it, right? Like, we all saw that man was hurt. And he just kept going because he knew his team needed him. And at the end of the day, A&M probably just threw more bodies at the problem. But, man, Harbor, hold your head up high, dude. Like, you really, like, that was an inspirational movement. Like, him and the Joey kid from NC State, like, those are 2 performances from guys that are playing out on the edge where they looked like they played like offensive lineman football, defensive lineman football to make sure that they did everything they could to try to put their team in position to succeed.
We, again, talking to college football with our guy Michael Felder on the AAA Heat and Air phone lines. We mentioned earlier that Harbor touchdown on Saturday where he goes 80 yards. Yeah, we've seen him catch some like deep balls where he didn't really have to go that much further. That was the touchdown we've been waiting for 3 years where he just catches it and just pulls away from everybody. Like, that's the touchdown that we've desired to see for 3 seasons now.
It was great. I mean, it was amazing. And remember, he's doing it while he's still hurt.
Yeah.
And he's still just pulling away. And so that was – and then obviously you get the controversy with the Texas State Trooper. They call them what's the Chuck Norris thing, the Rangers? I don't know.
Yeah, Texas Rangers.
Yeah, whatever that was bunk, honestly. Like, should not have happened and was ridiculous. And I'm glad that A&M responded in a way that was like, this is not something that's going to be okay with us.
Yeah, I've taken to call that guy Barney Fife the last couple days because he hiked up those britches in that moment and asserted authority where it wasn't needed.
Yeah, those guys, like, they came to check on their teammate, 1, because he scored a touchdown, so they wanted to celebrate with him, but 2, they knew he was in pain, and they wanted to make sure that he got walked back safe, and this guy, everybody, listen, at some point you got to act like you've been there, right?
Sure.
Like, you can't do that. So it is what it is. The SEC, I guess because Alabama loses, the SEC is getting a little bit muddied, but I guess it's going to be, we're looking at what, Georgia and A&M is what we're looking at?
So as of right now, Alabama still holds the tiebreaker over Georgia because their second loss would be to FSU. So if Alabama lost the Iron Bowl, because Georgia's done, they've played all their conference games, then Georgia could get in, but they would need Auburn to help them out there. So it's still looking right now like Alabama and A&M for the SEC title.
You know what? If you're Georgia, are you not thrilled?
Yeah, that's the weird thing. And look, I'm a Georgia alumni, so I can speak on this. Like, I was talking to my dad about the other day, and he's like, I don't really want them to play in the SEC championship, which was an unfathomable thought a couple years ago, but that's kind of the reality of the 12-team playoff now.
Right. I think Oregon's in the same boat, right? Indiana, Ohio State, they're going to play. We expect those guys to play. Oregon's just going to be kind of sitting in the catbird seat, same as Georgia.
Yep.
And I do think that I don't think enough people think about this, but I do think that as long as you stay on routine and exams, they don't start until they would be playing their first game. So which means you get to stay on routine. You get to still have practice. You can do your simulated game. During the championship week, you still do a simulated game in practice and continue to work situations. And then you run into the playoff ready to go. Versus these teams that are going to have to play that extra game, that 13th data point, if you will. Mm-hmm. You play that 13th data point, and then you do want to give your team a little bit of a break because once you win that game, now you're going to go to a bye week. You go to a bye week, and then you've got to try to get everybody back on track. And it's just, I don't know what's more advantageous. I think Notre Dame's going to be an interesting one as well because as long as they win out, which they should, they're going to have like 3 weeks off before they play, and I don't know that they're going to be a host. So that's going to be interesting too to see what happens in front of them from a ranking standpoint. But we're going to find out tonight, anyways, right?
Yeah, that's right.
We're going to find out tonight when the rankings come up. We're going to find out how far Alabama falls. We're going to see what happens because of the Oklahoma loss with Alabama. We're going to see how far Oklahoma moves up. I think that between 6 and 10, there's a lot of room for teams to very slowly jockey for position, but those positions mean hosting a game versus going to an away game.
Well, one thing that I'm not expecting to see is an ACC team jumping into the top 12, as that still looks like a one-bid league as of right now. Though I think this past weekend we got a little bit more clarity with Louisville losing to Clemson in a game that, quite frankly, it looked like neither team was trying to win that game at the end. Yeah. But now you've shaken it down to 4 one-loss teams in conference play: Georgia Tech, Virginia, Pittsburgh, and SMU. Georgia Tech and Pittsburgh will play coming up here in a couple weeks, or excuse me, this upcoming weekend. So that'll settle that. One team will have the advantage over the other, and then we'll see what happens between Virginia and SMU and the way they figure this out. But it's still looking like it's going to be one team out of the ACC to make their way in this year. Is probably the next to last or last seed in the 12-team field.
Yeah, I look, we'll see if they take care of business against Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, obviously, the James Franklin situation is going to be interesting. I just think that what we're dealing with the ACC is a bunch of teams. I wish Notre Dame would have went out there and scored 100 points just to prove Pat Narduzzi right. I don't know if you heard his comment.
Oh, I did. They could have beat him by 100, and he wouldn't have cared.
Yeah, he wouldn't have cared. I wouldn't have cared. So we'll see what happens with them. But Pitt's still in the running. Georgia Tech, obviously, what a comeback by them. They got to play Georgia, which is a game that they want to have in Georgia, but Georgia has to have.
Yep.
And so then you look at UVA and you look at Pitt and you look at SMU, and SMU is interesting to me because a lot of folks have Miami penciled in, but SMU is the team that's still in front of them with an opportunity to kind of control themselves and get to where they want to be. They still have Louisville and they still play Cal. They beat Cal, they beat Louisville, and we'll see what happens with the other teams. But they are sitting there with the chance to be the team that takes on probably, I'm going to assume, Virginia or Georgia Tech. It's a mess. This whole thing is a mess, and I know everyone was clamoring for let's get rid of divisions and let's get rid of this and put our 2 best teams in. And now you're looking at it, and it's like, I mean, I just saw Utah beat Baylor, and Utah scored 50 points on Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a team that should be in the, I know BYU beat them 24-21, but maybe Utah's better now than they were then. So I don't know what to do, and I just want to give this quick shout out. I don't know what's going to happen in the American, where you have Navy, Tulane, North Texas, and shout out to my parents' alma mater, ECU.
Nice.
So ECU needs a lot of work. They need a little bit of help, but I'm hoping ECU gets to that American championship game.
Well, and is James Madison going to get ranked tonight? Are they the highest ranked G5 team? Like, a lot of questions in that regard too, that we're hopefully going to figure out some answers to tonight.
Yeah, JMU, look, they're 9-1. Why would you? They're undefeated in their league. They keep going out and showing up. Why would you not put them in the top 25?
Because they're not enough. Because they're not enough of a brand, and that matters to the committee. That's my answer.
And we're watching Indiana like in real time have to go through that. And Indiana, what Indiana has to do, I think has been really interesting. I don't know how much Indiana you watch, but like I watch a lot. I watch Indiana. Outside of ECU, Indiana is my favorite team in the country right now.
Okay.
And just to watch, like I love their defense and how aggressive they are, how physical they are, and they know that they have to score. Like they had to score. They've scored 50 points. One, two, three, four, five times this year they've scored over 50 points, and they know they have to put it all on paper so that people will respect them.
Sure.
Because everyone's automatically going to default to Ohio State.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. Again, and look, we don't have enough time for this. Got 60 seconds till break, but I don't believe a lot of those people in that committee room are probably qualified to be doing what they're doing. But you know what? It gives us things to talk about, and that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, I dig it. I really like. I'm rooting for ECU to get in. I'm rooting for JMU to get in. I'm rooting for Indiana to take care of business. I can't wait to watch them take on Ohio State because I do think that Ohio State just assumes that their uniforms are going to win when they walk in the building, and Indiana is not that type of team. They're cut from a different cloth.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Appreciate the time, man, and we'll talk to you here soon.
All right, sounds good. You guys take it easy.
All right, Mike Felder there joining us on the AAA Heating and Air phone line. We'll come back, wrap up the hour. Lane Kiffin's giving an update on what's going on with his saga out there at Ole Miss. We'll let you hear that next. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Captain Dave with you on your Tuesday on the game. welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Captain Dave, along with you, tag teaming. We're the Road Warriors 3000, and we're managered. Our manager is Andre 3000, who will play us to the ring with his flute. We've discussed that today, so that's our tag team for when Bill's not here. We'll keep that in mind. Coach Beamer coming up here in about 10 minutes. Usual Tuesday press conference. Talk about A&M, talk about Coastal, and all that kind of stuff, and I'm sure take some tough questions as well about where this program is as of right now. The coaching carousel, and we alluded to it a little bit a moment ago with Michael Felder there when he mentioned, James Franklin taking the Virginia Tech job, and I'll get more into that a little bit later on in the show. But Lane Kiffin's the most interesting person here, and there's been a lot of speculation in the past basically 2 days or so about where he sits right now with Ole Miss and this supposed ultimatum that's been given by the university of, hey, you better tell us what you're doing before the Egg Bowl so we can kind of know what the plan is, and if you're going to go, maybe we cut you loose or whatever it may be. Quite literally minutes ago, he was on the Pat McAfee show, and Pat, being the host that he is, asked him directly, like, hey, this ultimatum, what's the deal? Here was Lane Kiffin's response.
Yeah, that's absolutely not true. There's been no ultimatum, anything like that at all. And so I don't know where that came from, like a lot of stuff that comes out there. Like I said, man, we're having a blast. I love it here. I mean, our running back's sitting right over here. Come on over. And it just couldn't be better. Like I said, you pray for things. Our fans prayed for this type of thing, and now we're in the middle of it. So enjoy it. You're 10-1, you're getting ready, you got a bye week, you get to watch half the country lose, and there's no way we can lose Saturday, and then you play the Egg Bowl and go dominate that and keep that Egg Bowl trophy home where it's been for a long time.
Now, here's the reality. Like, Lane Kiffin could be lying through his teeth, right? He could just tell us the thing that he thinks people want to hear, and there be no truth to it at all. And when you've been covering and talking about the sport of college football long enough, there are the insiders that when they say something or they tweet something out, it's 99% of the time got validity to it, right? The Pete Thamels, the Brett McMurphys, the Ross Dellinger, whoever all has been reporting on this, and most of them have in the past 24 to 48 hours, there's a grain of truth in there somewhere. And maybe Kiffin's just trying to kick the can down the road and not, because again, he's asked about this stuff after the game on Saturday. And he's like, it's disrespectful for these guys. We're not focused on that. We're trying to make the playoff and those kind of things, where he wasn't directly saying no. And even in that clip right there, he didn't directly say I'm not leaving Ole Miss to go take the LSU job or the Florida job or whatever it may be. And maybe the ultimatum is something different than what is being reported, but still similar in nature. Again, he doesn't have to be honest with us. He can be lying through his teeth, and we'll find out here in due time. But again, there's enough smoke out there from very trusted, reputable sources that there's something happening behind the scenes with Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss that seems to be coming to a head here soon, right? Again, there's pictures of, at the very least, his family. I don't think we've gotten an official picture of Lane Kiffin being with the family on their trip down to Gainesville, which, and I didn't get to hear the full interview because I'm here doing this. I don't know if he was asked about that or not. But there are at least photos of his family taking trips down to Baton Rouge to check things out, supposedly. Now, again, that's not a commitment one way or the other. That's, like any job, you go and check the place out. Want to make sure your family's good with it before you make the switch and all those kind of things. So that's not a guarantee. That doesn't tie him to those schools, but it is interesting that these kind of things are happening. And I go back to once again, if you're an Ole Miss fan, right, your program has had good years. They've never been like great or elite in the SEC. Well, they won the one SEC championship back in the day, which I think they've now retroactively awarded as a national championship or something along those lines. But anyway, they haven't taken that next step to being a top-tier program in the SEC, and you seem like you're on the doorstep of that, right? They've already played 11 games. They don't have to play this weekend, as you heard Lane Kiffin say there. They got the Egg Bowl. And even in losing that, I think they're still in. Now, yeah, they'd probably go from being a host to a team that has to go on the road for the first round, but I am pretty darn confident in saying that Ole Miss will be in this year's college football playoff, and you're now distracted, not only you as the fans, but your players, your coaches, everybody around your program about, is your coach going to stay? And if Kiffin decides to take a job, is he even coaching in the playoff? Because, again, I go back to the new calendar in college football. Early signing day, transfer portal being one window now. Like, if LSU's going to hire him or Florida or whatever, they're going to be like, no, you need to be here now. Like, the days of waiting for a coach to finish out their season before coming to you are kind of over, right? Like, he would need to jump ship and go to that new place to start putting in the foundation of what next year's team is going to be. So we could really be looking at a coach take his team to a playoff for the first time ever in his first ever playoff appearance as a head coach and not even be there to coach the games. I'm so fascinated by what's going to be unfolding here over the course of the next couple days, hours, week, who knows. But before next Friday against Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl, I feel like we're going to know something. And, again, Lane Kiffin, never a dull moment when it comes to old Joey Freshwater. So we'll see what happens there. We'll also see what happens with Coach Beamer as he talks to the media coming up here in about 5 minutes as he gives an assessment of what went wrong on Saturday and starts turning the attention to the Chanticleers of Coastal Carolina coming up this weekend. That's all coming up next on the Halftime Show. Tyler Head and Captain Dave on your Tuesday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. Halftime show. Tyler Head, Captain Dave, along with you here on your Tuesday on the game. Keeping an eye on the podium, and as soon as Shane Beamer gets up there and starts talking, we'll get you out to him and hear his thoughts on where things are at right now with this Carolina football program. As obviously it's been a tough 48-plus hours now. I guess we're into the 72-hour range when it comes to separation for what happened Saturday against Texas A&M, and having to once again be the subject of a lot of negative things around the world of college football in terms of how everybody saw this collapse go down. So we'll hear from him in a moment. Get some injury updates as well. Obviously, Nick Harbor had to spend the night out in College Station. Beamer did mention on the teleconference on Sunday that it did seem like he was trending towards being fine, and we'll get an update from him. And of course, we won't get an availability report this week because it's not a SEC game, so we won't know guys' status day to day. And I guess now I know the ACC has one this year, but I don't think you're required to do that in cross-conference games. So I guess we're done with availability reports. Oh, okay. So no availability reports to look forward to. On the Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays leading into games for the rest of the season. So we'll see if Beamer decides to provide any updates on those guys and where things stand heading into these final two games of the regular season. And I think more important than anything else, people just kind of want to know, okay, where's your head at? What you thinking, right? Because you're in a tough place where nobody expected you to be 3-7 on the year, not playing for a bowl. Now, yeah, I guess there's a small percentage chance that not enough teams could go to 6-6 and or get to 6 wins at least, and then you're maybe being added as one of those teams based on the academic rankings or whatever, but you don't want to sit and rely on that. And as Beamer said on Saturday, they would take the bowl invite because that's valuable for practices and stuff like that, but it's not something that I think the fan base would ultimately have a ton of pride in. So we'll see what he does end up saying. As a little bit late today. He's usually pretty on time, Dave. He's usually like pretty spot on within like a minute or two of the top of the hour. But I don't know, maybe he's still watching the A&M film. I don't know. That's my best guess right now.
Yeah, still watching film.
Yeah, I imagine there's been a lot of film watching. And like I said, Beamer's emotions are always interesting because after loss, rightfully so, very down on Saturday, typically pretty down on Sunday after probably spending the entire day watching film of what went wrong and all that kind of stuff, but usually bounces back to being his usual, normal, cheerful, jipper type of self by Tuesday. And we'll see. Now, again, historic collapse on Saturday. I don't know if that's going to be the same case or not, but we'll see what kind of mood Beamer is ultimately in, coming up here in just a minute when he does ultimately decide to speak to the media. Real quick, while I have a second, I will tell you, Terry Ford going to be broadcasting live at White Brown Smiles at 224 O'Neill Court out in Columbia today. Doing a food drive for those in need. And if you want to come by and bring some non-perishable food items, they'll certainly help out the drive there. Again, from 3 until 6, you can join Terry at White Brown Smiles at 224 O'Neill Court. That is suite number 13 out in Columbia. And then tonight, men's basketball back in action as they take on Radford. Tip is at 7 o'clock. Premium coverage starting at 6:30 right here on the game. I believe Coach Beamer is headed out to the podium. Let's go to him now.
All right. Sorry I'm a few minutes late. I was continuing the fight that Clayton White and I had yesterday. I didn't whip his butt enough yesterday, so I wanted to finish it before I walked in here. I told y'all Saturday after the game, social media is going to be the end of us all. There's another example. Are y'all freaking kidding me? And you guys believed it because y'all were texting coaches and staff members yesterday to ask if this was true. Sent it to my own wife, and a screenshot that I had Jessica Jackson send me of this rumor, and her response was, "Did y'all?" And just like I told our players, put the phone down, Emily, and everyone else. I know she's listening. I love you, babe. Having said that, this is our Salute the Troops game. Excited for that. What a way to honor our military. So grateful for them and the freedoms they provide for us, the sacrifices they make. It's always one of my favorite games, being able to look up in the stands and see them. So as we told our team this morning, we need to go put on a good performance for those men and women and play well in front of them. We're going to do senior day this week, so we should be honoring our seniors at around 3:50 p.m. Kickoff's what, 4:15? 4:15. So at 3:50 is when we'll honor those seniors, and would please ask our fans to be in your seats early and give those guys the recognition and honor that they deserve. There's some special young men in that group that have given a lot to Gamecock football. Some guys that were here before I even got hired as the head coach that have now been here for 5 seasons with me alone, plus one with Coach Muschamp. So want to honor those guys. They've given so much to the University of South Carolina. They love being Gamecocks, and I would really hope that our fans would be in their seats early to show appreciation for those seniors that'll be participating on Saturday. And then we need to go play well against a really good Coastal team. Coach Beck's done an awesome job. They're hot. They had a loss the other night when they had an injury at the quarterback position, but still had a chance to win at the end of the game. They've scored 40 points or more in, 4 straight games, I believe. They were on a 4-game winning streak before they got beat the other night, playing some really good football, had some nice wins throughout the month of October. So they're certainly a team that's gotten better as the year has gone on. They present some problems defensively. They've got good personnel. The scheme is a little bit different than what we see week in, week out in this conference. So we've got to do a great job of putting together a plan to go attack a defensive structure that's a little bit different, and they're very talented on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, they're running the heck out of the football. They've used 3 quarterbacks this year. All 3 quarterbacks are a threat with their legs. They're really deep at receiver, play a lot of guys at the receiver position, talented at the running back position, and they have size on the offensive line, and they present a lot of problems from a schematic standpoint, hence the fact that they've scored 40 or more in multiple games here in a row. And then special teams, we better be on point this week. The game against App State changed on an onside kick that they surprised them on. They've got fake punts in their past. They returned a kickoff for a touchdown the other night, so they present a lot of problems on defense too. So we need to have a great week of preparation, prepare well, and get ready to go play a great game on Saturday. And I know it'll be a great environment in Williams-Brice Stadium. I get it. Nobody's happy about where we are from a record standpoint, but I know how great our fan base is, and I know that they'll savor the opportunity to be back in Williams-Brice Stadium for 2 more opportunities in 2025 to be together as a fan base and finish this season the right way, because it'll be September before we're in there again. So excited about the opportunity to get back home and play in our stadium. It's been a while, and starts this Saturday. Questions? Oh, wow. David, I did not do that, David. That is not my decision, David. Just for the record, do not write bad articles about me, David. There's enough of those out there already, I'm sure.
Well, I did not know about that, so that's a tall order there.
Yes.
How has the mood been amongst the team the last few days since College Station, with just kind of processing the fact? I'm sure it's been a process for everyone to process missing a bowl game and just the disappointment that comes with that. And what's kind of been your message to the guys with these last 2 weeks here?
Yeah, I've been proud of them, Jack. I think early on Saturday in the aftermath, that was a quiet plane ride home, as you can imagine. That was a quiet Sunday during meetings. I think there was very much a sense of what just happened. I think we all feel that way. And then you look at the tape on Sunday and you're really able to dive into it. Let's give A&M some credit for the way that their quarterback and their team played in the second half, and simply, did not play well enough or coach well enough in the second half. So we watched that tape on Saturday, but like always, and I know people don't want to hear it, and I really don't care, we went out on Sunday night and we had an awesome practice. And our guys responded just like I knew that we would respond, because as we talked about as a team in our team meeting on Sunday, our foundation is really strong. Our foundation is really powerful. Our culture is really strong. Our culture is really powerful. And that has been on display week in, week out, because if you don't have that, we're not in the competitive games like we've been in throughout the season. And I get it. I'm not in the moral victories. I'm not in the, having the how hard we play. We're into winning football games, and we haven't done it. I fully understand that. But I told our players Sunday night I knew they would respond that way. We had a spirited practice, energetic practice. We always do a young guys scrimmage at the end of practice on Sunday nights, where the young guys that don't play, they or haven't played as much, they get out there and play. We let the players, they're basically the coaches. So I love seeing DQ Smith and Gerald Kilgore put on headphones, and they're calling the defense during the scrimmage and going at it and supporting their teammates. And then yesterday was the off day, and then we came back in here this morning and had a really energetic and strong, powerful practice today. So they responded like I knew they would. Disappointed, no question about it. Sad in a lot of ways, because we've only got 11 days left with this group, and no one's happy about that, but very motivated to go finish this thing out the right way and have an opportunity to once again put what we're about on display Saturday, because I know the narrative is, I'm sure it's how is South Carolina going to come back from this, how South Carolina respond, and we get an opportunity on Saturday to show that.
Shane, we won't get any more availability reports, or Nick and Cisse, okay?
They're progressing. Cisse was full go today in practice. Nick's better than what he was a couple days ago. Jalewis Solomon missed the game the other day with an injury. He's trending in the right direction, I would say, on those guys.
And then fans are fans. Social media, as you mentioned, is what it is. But is it possible to ignore all of the noise, especially since Saturday?
If I don't look at my phone, it is, which I've tried to do a great job, which I've tried to do a great job of doing, other than I've checked some NFL scores on Sunday. And I like reading Cole Kublik's takeaways each week. I think he does a pretty good job and kind of an understanding of what's going on in the SEC. So I did click on it to look at that. I'll be honest with you, the rumor that started yesterday about Clayton and I had no idea. I walked into the staff room yesterday at 4 o'clock and said something like, everybody's kind of looking at me funny and looking at me, and Clayton sits next to me, and I could just sense there was something in the air, and they informed me what was out there on social media about that. But yeah, I feel like I can, because my responsibility, David, is to the coaches and the players and the staff in this building, and being the best version of myself for them, to allow us to go be the best version of ourselves on Saturday. And me typing in my name on social media is not going to do a lot of good. I know that, win or lose. So for me, yeah, I can. Now, when this thing's going off and I'm getting the, praying for you, stay strong, all those text messages, it's a pretty good, I have an idea of what the narrative may be out there, and that's okay. I love it. I love being in the SEC, and you have passionate fans that expect better, and we're going to deliver better here going forward. Easier said for me than it is the players, because the players, we just finished practice and now they're off to class, and we don't see them again until tomorrow morning. So it's easier said for me than them, but it's just part of it. And social media is a different aspect of it that, coaches didn't have to deal with 20 years ago, and it's a different thing now. Everybody's got a voice, and everybody gets clicks by being negative, and I understand that, but I also know that there's perception and then there's reality, and I try and focus on the reality of what the mindset is in this building, and trying to help these men and women be better.
Shane, when you have a season like this one, where the goals you had in the preseason, they come off the table, do you have to modify your motivating message or your technique, or even the tone?
I don't think so. We didn't talk at the beginning of the season about, the playoffs. I think that was an unspoken understanding that that's what this team wanted to do. And it disappointed that it hasn't happened. I certainly understand that. But each week, Rick, our goal is to, go compete and be the best version of ourselves on that Saturday, and that's what we're trying to do again this week. It's with the playoffs were off the table. Now bowl eligibility is off the table, and it sucks. I mean, it is what it is. It's sickening. But like I told the team this morning, we still get an opportunity to go compete 2 more times together as a team. And I'd really be sick if last Saturday had been the last game, and now I got to sit around for 10 months waiting to go play again. We get to go compete in front of the greatest fan base in America on Saturday, and that's the message: is senior day, you just send these guys out the right way. We get an opportunity to go compete. There's a standard that we play with every single Saturday. We talked about last week, before the game and at halftime, that the scoreboard is irrelevant. Just go compete and go dominate. And that's the way that we did things in the first half. And then we talked about it at halftime, and we didn't do it in the second half in regards to how we played. But it's the same thing this week. The record is what it is, but the opportunity to go compete, that hasn't changed and won't. And also understanding, too, that we're all sick and we don't want to feel this feeling again. And I realized that 1 year ago, Rick, we were sitting here tonight getting ready to play Wofford, and we're all dialed into the playoff rankings to see where we're ranked, and we're not there right now, but I do know next year at this time, we're going to be sitting here next year on this Tuesday night watching the playoff rankings to see where we are in the rankings show, and we're going to be firmly in the mix for a college football playoff berth next year at this time. And we're all sick about this feeling, but we're not going to go through this thing again, and we're going to go finish this season out the right way, send these guys out the right way, and then the minute that thing hits zero on the clock after the Thanksgiving Day game or Thanksgiving weekend game, we're full speed ahead on 2026.
Hey, Coach. DQ was in here earlier and was talking about how he's told some of the younger players to kind of remember this feeling. How much have you seen, I guess, the players that have been here, through the rough times and have gotten to the other side of it, just get the younger guys through a season like this?
Yeah, I think they've done a great job. All of, we don't have many seniors. When we announced that group on Saturday, I think there's 20-something guys, but when you look at the number of guys that are, starting necessarily on offense and defense, there's really not a lot offensively and defensively. So those guys, there's a lot of older guys that have invested a lot into this program. Bradley Dunn has been here for a long time, and no, he's not a starter on this team, but he is a valuable, critical member of this team, and I feel like he's been a fantastic leader for this team this year and having perspective and being able to share with those guys that even though you're not starting on offense or defense or whatnot, he's playing on special teams for us, you can really pour into your teammates and help them through the struggles from this season to help us be better going forward. We've got a lot of guys like that, but I feel like they have. It's I hate it for them, and that's what breaks my heart is they sit in the front row of the team meeting room in the team meeting next door, and it hurts me that this is how their last year is going because we all wanted to send them out better than this, and it stinks that we're going through this, but as I told them, the other day, the whole team, we're going to be stronger for it. We'll be stronger as a team next season because of this and because we don't want to feel this feeling again. And then the guys that aren't coming back, they'll, God has a plan. And I don't know why we have gone through this. Yes, there's football standpoint that we can fix. Here's why we went through it. But just big picture wise, I hate that they're going through it, but I do know that they'll be stronger as, human beings and going into life after their playing days are over because of this experience for sure. And I'm really proud of them and how they've handled it, because if anybody, Jack asked about the mood, if anybody had the right, if you will, to go out on the practice field and be a bunch of sad boys, it's that senior class, and it's been the complete opposite. They've been awesome, and I knew they would be.
One of the emphasis that you've talked about a lot this year is dominating the fourth quarter, and obviously what happened Saturday, and you've had several games this year where it's very competitive going into the fourth quarter, but haven't been able to get it done. Where do you think you guys have kind of fallen short in those final 15 minutes and in your experience coaching? What makes a good fourth quarter team?
Yeah, I think from it starts with, all that stuff to me starts in the off season, January, February, all the things you're doing in the wintertime, in the summertime. You're building that mental toughness, that physical toughness for the fourth quarter, especially in this league where, it's going to be a dogfight every single week. It starts with from a physical standpoint, making sure that you're fresh mentally and physically as you get into the fourth quarter, that your bodies are in position to go be at your best. And that's with the preparation that you have during the week, how you're taking care of your body. And then during the game, talked about it with our coaches on Saturday, it was 80 degrees out in Texas. We got to play our players and keep them fresh so we're fresh and at our best as we go into the fourth quarter. So all of that is really important. And then when you get into it, I think everything is magnified, and you've got to make plays and we got to execute. And that falls back on us as coaches. It starts with us in regards to putting our players in position to execute. But then whether it be, A&M, Ole Miss, Alabama, LSU, all games in the fourth quarter that we had opportunities to win and we didn't get it done, there were plays where just frankly we didn't execute. The little touchdown pass to the running back out of the backfield against Alabama, we didn't execute. And the 2 long touchdown passes that they had in the fourth quarter, we didn't execute. And some plays that we missed in the passing game on offense, we didn't execute. And this ain't me sitting here blaming the players, they didn't do their jobs. I'm not saying that at all. It falls back on me and it falls back on us as coaches. But I think everything is magnified in the fourth quarter, and that's why I was 3 minutes late. I wasn't fighting Clayton. I was meeting with our leadership group, and that's what we were talking about, was just, in the fourth quarter, we got to make plays. And it's you guys, particularly in this room, this leadership group, has got to go, lead us and make plays. And I'm not saying they didn't. A lot of those guys made a lot of great plays on Saturday. We got to make more of them. And as coaches, we've got to, in crunch moments like that, we've got to do a better job of putting our players in position to make those plays and coaching them up throughout the week. So when those times come, we make them, and that'll be certainly something. I mean, we always do it in the off season in regards to the weight room and the off season program, but yeah, that'll be a big point of emphasis next year as we go into the season in regards to, continuing to put our players in even more adverse situations where they got to communicate and be detailed at the end of weight room workouts, winter workouts, all that stuff like we do in the off season.
Kind of following up on the last 2 questions, DQ earlier, he said this year was a big year for him leadership-wise. He said, everyone can be a leader when you're 2-0, but it's a little bit different when you're 3-7. What have you seen from your leaders as a whole through adversity, and who have those leaders been?
Yeah, kind of like we just had that question. I think those guys have done a great job of being consistent and helping our guys through this and staying even-keeled and poised and just leading the way from a work ethic standpoint and coming to work every day in this building with the right mindset. And it's a lot of them. A lot of those guys that'll be walking through senior day ceremonies on Saturday, a good bit of that group, and then some really good, talented, younger players that have stepped up in roles. I'm sure you pay attention to who our captains are each and every week. That's a pretty good example of who we feel like the leaders have been on the team each year or each week.
You mentioned a lot about the goals for 2026. What needs to happen between now and, I guess, mid-January, do you think, to be able to put yourself in a position to reach those goals?
Well, one, and I get it, no one wants to hear it. I don't care. We're not far away. I think when we've had the fourth quarters, we haven't been getting, to use a Coach Spurrier term, getting clobbered every week. We've had a chance to win literally every game this season, and we haven't gotten it done. So in my mind, Jordan, it's very much, we've made a lot of progress in the 5 years that I've been here, and this year is absolutely not what we want. But we've done a lot of things for the very first time in our 4 years here. We've made progress. We've elevated this program from when I got here. And in so many ways, the hardest step is now the next step to take, where you've made progress. You're on the verge of the college football playoff last season. We're 2 points away from being in it. And then the hardest step in so many ways is that next step to get there. And we didn't take that step this year, but it's not like we didn't take that step and we just came crashing back to earth and now we have to dig our way all the way back up. We're right there. And so what has to happen? Obviously, there's some coaching hires that have to happen, and that'll happen as quick as, I'm not going to rush it, but as soon as possible after the Clemson game. That's the first part. Getting the staff in order in regards to how it's structured going into 2026. That has to happen. We've got to be able to close out this recruiting class that we've got committed right now, which those guys have been awesome. Some of the first text messages I got after the game on Saturday were from those recruits that with awesome messages, so grateful for them. And as I've told them, they've got a chance to impact our program the moment they walk in this building, not because of the kind of players they are, but the people they are too. We've got to be able to, get our current roster in order as we go into 2026. Some guys have NFL decisions to make. Guys have, other decisions to make. We've got to be able to retain that. And my conversations have been good with guys. And then, frankly, there'll be some guys, I'm sure, that don't want to be a part of this going forward, and that's okay too. You know, we'll cross that bridge if somebody decides to move on for another opportunity to go play somewhere else. And then the portal opens in January, and I don't think we need to go out there. I had had this conversation with one of our starters on defense last week, one of our key players that has a chance that will come back next year, and we talked about the portal in some ways, and he said it. He's like, we don't need a lot. In regards to the portal, it's not like we need to go out and sign 40 portal guys and flip this roster. We don't. That game Saturday, we were about 2 or 3 plays away from winning that, and we've got the people in our program to do it. And then we've got to be able to go out and add some other people from the outside in the portal to be those 2, 3, 4 difference makers, whether it be on the line of scrimmage or whether it be at skill positions, whatever it may be, and strengthen what I think is already a solid roster going into 2026. And then you've got to look back, and I just can't sit here as the head coach and say, okay, the season finished up with whatever record it finishes up with, and we're going to add a few more players and we'll be a year older and everything's good. No, I mean, there's other changes you have to make in regards to looking at things, but I'm also not going to just, say that last year meant nothing when we went 9-3 and won 6 games in a row and almost got in the playoffs, to think that everything worked okay then and it doesn't work now we just blow everything up. That's not the case, but we always use the term around here, course correct, and we got off course a little bit with some different things this year, and it's my job as the head coach to get us back on course, and that's what we're going to do, whether it be tweaks to the schedule or tweaks to some things that we train, tweaks to be better in the fourth quarter, tweaks to be better in September than we have been. All that, you look at that, and it really, really, really stinks not being in a bowl game in December, but I'll be able, we play Clemson, and then I think the last day of class is the following Friday, and then our players got exams and they're not really in the building, so it gives me and our coaching staff really the month of December to it's a dead period, so we can't go recruit. And last year, transfers could come visit. They can't come visit this year because it's a dead period, so it really gives you the whole month of December to really, I don't want to say get a head start because I want to be playing, but in so many ways, really dive into how we can be better. And those are things that I'm already doing right now myself, but to be able to include the staff and get hard to work on it. This ain't going to be one of those, all right, the season's over, let's just, go to the beach and kick our feet up till January and then let's get ready to go. Bull crap. I mean, we're going to finish the Clemson game and then we're immediately to work on 2026. Sorry, I know that was like an 11-minute answer to your question. Sorry.
Following up on what you were saying earlier about perception versus reality, aside from like the culture stuff and being in the close games, like you said, are there any other realities that you feel like aren't maybe necessarily talked about or obvious to folks on the outside?
No, because I feel like anything that I say, perception, reality, may sound like an excuse. And in regards to this season, I think it's just the head coach, if that's what you're asking. I look at, going back to Jordan's question, I look at the reasons that we are where we are right now, and there's, certainly things that are fixable that I will fix. And you realize how close we truly are in a lot of ways, and it's an adjustment here, an adjustment there, an addition here, a subtraction there, whatever it may be. But it's when I say perception versus reality, I get it. Everything on the outside is negative, negative, negative. Everybody sucks, I'm sure, but I look at the body of work, and nobody's patting ourselves on the back because we're of where we are right now. But I do believe like there's a reality of we're not that far away. And I truly believe that. I know that. Our players know that. And that's why the conversations that I've had with the players on our team, Hale, in regards to their futures and guys that have decisions on whether or not they want to come back next season, have been overwhelmingly positive. Now, I get it. The portal doesn't open until January, but I think if this thing was if the culture wasn't strong and the reality was what people maybe perceive it to be on the outside, we wouldn't have the positive things that are going on in this building, and there's a lot of them. So that's what I meant by that.
Shane, you mentioned how there's not a ton of seniors on this team, but with no bowl game this year, with these last 2 games, how do you balance getting those seniors as many touches as possible versus getting some of the younger guys kind of?
I'm trying to win the game, period. So we're not in the, hey, you're a senior and let's get you some carries and some catches. We got a big challenge this Saturday against Coastal Carolina. So senior, junior, freshman, sophomore, I don't really care what class you are. We want to honor the seniors, and the best way to honor the seniors is to go win the football game and play really well. And that's going to be a big challenge this week against Coastal and next week against Clemson.
Hey, Coach, you talked about looking for new coaches going into next season. There have been a lot of shakeups across all of college football. What do you think about a lot of new openings across the league and across college for head coaches, coordinators, things like that? Because there have been a lot of shakeups.
Yeah, there has been. I mean, there's head coaching openings when there is a staff that gets let go. Now, those that you're talking about, 10 coaches and additional staff members that are on the market. With all the, I've got to hire 2 coaches. I'll be competing with other jobs that are open. I'm certainly, well aware of that. So it's a volatile profession. I know that. I see that. And we know what we signed up for. So you hate that there are that many openings. You hate to see any person lose their job. People, just see the coaches, but these guys are husbands and fathers and have children and wives that are affected and families are affected. And it's a brutal business in so many ways. And you hurt for those families, but at the same time, you have a job to do. So that's my job, is to advance this program and help this program take the next step. And I can say this in regards to those openings. There's been a lot of interest in our 2 openings. There's not necessarily conversations that I'm having with coaches right now, but every coach has an agent practically. And there's, every time I look at my phone, there's a text or a phone call or an email from an agent that, wants to talk about so-and-so client of his that has an interest in coming here. So that's good, and there'll be a time and place for that. But I know we'll be extremely competitive in what we have to attract someone here.
I guess question could kind of be framed for the offensive line hire as well. But with the OC, I know you make the decision ultimately, but who has the influence besides you? Like, who do you seek out to get advice or talk to about, hey, is this guy a good fit? Like, do you, like with the OC, do you maybe go to like the rest of the coaches? Do you look for Lenore's input on it? Since after all, you are looking for someone to help develop the quarterbacks. Like, can you kind of break that down for me?
Yeah, I think every situation is different. I've been a part of some places where we had an opening on a staff when I was an assistant coach. I mean, we had an opening on the staff, and the head coach sat everybody down, said, anybody have anybody they want to recommend? If you got a name, give me a name. And then we brought that person in, and the whole person sat in on the whole staff sat in on the interview and gave everyone their thoughts. I've been a part of a situation where there's an opening on the staff and the head coach doesn't tell anybody about it. And next thing you know, you got a new assistant coach, and it's, hey, welcome Jack or whoever to the staff. And it was totally that guy. So I think every situation is different. There's input that you want to get from players. I mean, when I made the decision to promote Mike after the season, I met with Lenore's and the quarterbacks about it and got their input on what do you think about this, and it was and whatnot. Certainly, I've got awesome bosses, and Dr. Amaritas and Thad Westbrook, chairman of the board, and Jeremiah Donati and Jeff Crane and Jeff and Jeremiah and I will certainly, talk about it and have talked about it, and I'll lean on them and kind of get their thoughts on different people as we go through this process for both positions or any position, last year included. And then, I'll involve certain players to a certain degree. I think it's a lot of reaching out to people outside this building too, and that maybe know a person. You've worked, hey, so-and-so, I'm really interested in hiring David to be the offensive line coach or tight ends coach or receivers coach or running backs coach or quarterbacks coach or DB coach or whatever. You worked with him at so-and-so school. What do you think? Or maybe it's players that I know that have been around that guy that are playing in the NFL. So I'll be exhaustive in it, trying to, do my due diligence on everything. But you also got to be careful, I think, about hence the power of social media when you involve too many people and then all of a sudden somebody's name pops out there and you screw up a person's candidacy because he's got a really good job somewhere else and all that. So it's a balancing act. There'll be people that I'll lean on for sure, like any decision that I make, and I think every situation is different.
Is there a chance that Sean Elliott could be the O-line coach and then you go and look for a tight ends coach?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think everything is on the table, you know, and I mean this when I say it, Jordan. Like, my focus is entirely on let's do everything we can over these next 2 weeks to send these players out the right way and finish this season the right way. And in regards to what this staff looks like going forward, I haven't, like, boxed myself into anything. I want to, whatever allows us to be at our max strength as we go into the 2026 season is what I want to do. So I'm not going into it saying anything. I think Sean's done an awesome job as the offensive line coach. Our guys have done a really good job in a lot of ways and made progress. And Mike did a great job last week in that A&M game. So, you know, I like the progress that we're making on offense right now at every position. And now we got to keep doing that over these next 2 games. And then we'll step back and take a look at it and figure out what's best as we move forward. All right. Thank y'all.
All right. There you go. Coach Beamer's weekly presser there. We'll come back and we'll talk about what Coach Beamer had to say as the halftime show was long here on your Tuesday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Captain Dave, along with you here on your Tuesday on the game. That, of course, was Coach Beamer talking for his usual Tuesday presser that you just heard, and he was actually in a pretty good mood, as he typically is on Tuesdays. I did find it really funny that he chose to address the Clayton White thing right off the jump, and reading some tweets from people that were there. Apparently, Clayton White came into the presser like with a balled-up fist, kind of as a wink, wink, nod, nod to the rumor that had been going around. And I saw it too, message board, social media, whatever it may be, about those two getting into some kind of physical altercation on Sunday, having to be separated. Again, Beamer squashed that right then and there. I don't know how many people believed it, but there doesn't seem to be any merit to it. Again, those kind of things can run wild and get one or two people that say it, and then everybody starts believing it, but that doesn't seem to be anything backing that up in terms of that happening. And again, Beamer just kind of made a joke about it there, right there at the very beginning. So again, nothing, no substance to that. And the usual stuff comes up there with him talking. Obviously, talking about leadership and how much you need it right now when you're in the situation that you're in, going into the final two games, or you're not really playing for a whole lot besides the pride and honor of closing out the season, playing two more games, and going to honor the seniors on Saturday, which that's an interesting note. I don't remember if they've done the seniors past or not, where it's not in the final game, because typically like the final home game is senior day, which would be Clemson this year, but they're opting to do that this upcoming weekend. As you said, I think get to your seats like 350 or whatever, and they'll try it out. I think it's only 23 seniors from what I saw in the game notes. Luke Doty will have like his 12th senior day here at South Carolina, but they're going to do that this upcoming weekend for the Coastal game, and then try and close things out with 2 wins. Again, does that change the narrative of the season? It doesn't, but that's the state championship, I guess, as he said on Saturday or Sunday, whenever that was, is obviously the goal as of right now. We'll get more into what he had to say as the show rolls along, and now we kind of slowly start turning our attention. I get it. There's 2 more games left, but really, I think everybody's kind of looking ahead and thinking to 2026 already, as far as fans, media, all of us knowing that you're not really playing for a whole lot as of right now. So we'll continue that conversation. I'll talk about other things going on around the world of college football as the halftime show. Tyler Ed and Captain Dave rolls on here on your Tuesday on the game. right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. It's Ed and Captain Dave with you on your Tuesday here on the game. We'll get back more into what Coach Beamer had to say there in his presser. Coming up in hour number 3, we'll try and pull some of those cuts and get some of that fresh sound and talk about that. But there's a lot of things happening around the world of college football right now as we're closing in on the end of the regular season, and pieces are starting to fall in place for 2026 as well. And one news nugget that came out yesterday was the hiring of James Franklin at Virginia Tech. Of course, Franklin fired a little over a month ago by Penn State after the 3 consecutive losses, one to Oregon in overtime, one to UCLA, and then Northwestern did him in. Now, I said at the time, I didn't think that it was the right move to fire him. Going to be hard to replace him, especially somebody that won that consistently. But Penn State did what they decided to do, and I don't think anybody doubted that James Franklin wanted to find his way back to the sideline pretty quickly. And when you look at a place like Virginia Tech, it kind of makes perfect sense. It's an ideal kind of marriage between a coach like James Franklin, who has had a lot of success, right? And look, we knock him and make fun of him for the lack of success against top 10 teams, but still, he was consistently winning 9 to 10 games a season in his time at Penn State, which is not an easy thing to do. And last year had that team on the cusp of the national championship game before coming up short to Notre Dame. In fact, they had the ball on that last possession to try and drive to win. They didn't, but nevertheless had him in position, which is why it was so shocking that Penn State decided to pull the trigger when they did. But it's such a good hire for Virginia Tech, right? That's a program that since Frank Beamer retired has only had one double-digit win season with Fuente in his first year there back in 2016. So not a ton of success to hang your hat on here as of late. The prior years went really, really roughly. So that's a program that's trying to it's just looking to get back to respectability, I guess is the right word, right? They love to be competing for the ACC and playoff spots and all that kind of stuff. But step number 1 for them is just getting a foundation underneath that program again, because it seems to have been without one for the better part of the past decade, from Puente to Pry and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see how Franklin does out there. Now, it is also worth noting that the Virginia Tech Board of Visitors is putting forth $229 million to its athletic budget over the next 4 years, which, according to sources, makes it one of the top programs in the ACC in terms of funding. So you've got a coach that knows how to win, that has gotten a program like Penn State on the doorstep of being one of the national championship contenders. Didn't break through, obviously, but was at least in the mix of that next tier. Going to Virginia Tech, they're going to throw a lot of money at this, apparently. That coach that has the proven track record, probably going to be pretty easy to recruit for, right? You can say, hey, I did this at Penn State. I'm looking to turn around Virginia Tech. You want to become part of it? He's got ties to the DMV. I think this can work. I really do. The ACC seems like a very wide open conference as of right now. We still don't know who's going to be playing for the championship and possibly punching their ticket to the playoff here coming up in a couple weeks. It's kind of sorting itself out a little bit. But it seems like a conference that is so wide open right now that Franklin can come in and maybe have quick success, right? It's also a place where the pressure is significantly lower, right? Penn State got sick of winning 10 games a year, 9-10 games a year, playing in big bowl games, because they weren't able to beat the Ohio States and Michigans of the world, because for them, that's what their standard is, that they feel that they should beat those teams, and at least on a fairly consistent basis, and be in the national championship picture every single year. We're going to do that this year. They moved on from him. Not the same kind of pressure of Virginia Tech. They will give him time, right? If James Franklin goes, 5-7 in his first year and 6-6 in the second year, nobody's going to be ready to run him out of town. They'll give him time. Now, again, they would ideally like him to turn that program back into ACC and national championship contenders, and I think he probably will, or at least playoff contenders. I think he probably will. I don't know how much time it's going to take, but you're at a place now where they're not going to be breathing down your neck, the second you're having a season that starts to go a little bit sideways. They'll give him time, which for him is good. Also, this is per Brandon Marcello of CBS Sports that with him taking this job, they've negotiated the buyout down to $9 million, and that's due to Franklin getting another job in the coaching world. Because he had that option, like, hey, if you you have to pursue another opportunity reasonably between TV and coaching and all that kind of stuff. So he's not going to get his full, $49 million buyout, but still a nice little chunk of change. And I'm sure Penn State's glad they don't have to pay him all that money either. So there's your fallout of what's happening up at Virginia Tech as the first coach of the new cycle has been hired for 2026. And there's another coach that is always an interesting case of what's he going to do. And he's not telling anybody which way he's leaning as of right now. We'll get more into that coming up in hour number 3, as well as what's going to happen tonight in the college football playoff top 25 rankings. All that coming up. And we'll also get more into the Beamer Sound as well as the halftime show. Tyler Head and Captain Dave rolls on your Tuesday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. Hour number 3. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Captain Dave, along with you here on your Tuesday on the game. Again, rolling along for this week and trying to put the A&M game officially behind us after day. I don't know. Bill may want to come in here and touch on some more things about the game specifically tomorrow. But I think now we're transitioning away from the game itself and more looking at what is going to be happening going forward. And that's something that Shane talked about in his presser in the last hour is the goals and things that you have to do in the 2025 into 26 offseason to make things better. And again, we know it's the offense coordinator hire, which, let's be honest, you got to knock it out of the park, right? You got to get this right. And assuming, and it does seem like there's positive reports going on about the possibility, assuming that Sellers is back. Can you get somebody that can maximize his potential, develop in the way he needs to be developed, and quite frankly, get all the bad habits or whatever they are out of his system that have clearly become a thing this year, right? And whether it's Mike Shula or anybody else that's responsible for it, maybe it's multiple people. Whoever's responsible for Sellers taking the regression that he had, fix it, right? And whoever that coordinator hire is, we don't know. Beamer also rightfully was asked about, hey, there's a lot of job openings around college football, and this is something that we've brought up quite a bit, that, you get competition now, right? With so many head coaching openings happening at big power programs, well, they're going to hire a head coach, but they're also going to hire an OC. They're also going to hire an offensive line coach and so on and so forth. And right now you're looking for those too. So your attractiveness is something you're going to have to compete with these other programs around the country in terms of, who's going to come in here. And maybe it is. Maybe Sean Elliott stays your offensive line coach and you're looking for a tight ends coach or whatever it may be. It's not going to be a cakewalk to get these guys in there. And, we'll see what Beamer ultimately decides to do. Wes Mitchell on Gamecock Central recently reporting that, hey, a lot of people have been reporting, including Wes, that, hey, they're trying to make this hire as soon as possible once the regular season ends. So we'll see what that looks like. And again, we'll get more into what he had to say coming up here in just a minute. We'll get some of those cuts pulled. But our guy Casey and Gilbert wants to weigh in on the AAA Heat and Air phone lines. Casey, good hearing from you, man. Been a while. How we doing?
Not doing too bad, taking life a day at a time, especially being a Carolina fan.
I understand.
Yeah, the roller coaster of bleeding garnet and black is ever winding and has many loops in it, and I'm just trying to survive it. Because it's been a while since I've been that excited at the end of one first half, and then I do a complete 360 at the end.
Yep.
And those games are rough, man. I was, tired the next day, and I didn't know why, and it's so emotionally draining.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is.
Nonetheless, though, I'm still proud of my guys. I believe Coach when he says that we got good leadership and the team's morale is bouncing back. And from what I heard, this is what I interpreted as far as tone and inflection in his voice and what he was saying is he thinks, anyway, now things could change, but he thinks he's got a good grip on retaining what we need to for next year to just build around and make a run for the championship, because he ultimately said that'll be the goal next year or bust, pretty much, without saying the word bust. So I hope it's going to be interesting to see the retention. And as a Gamecock Nation and fan, that's all I'm looking forward to now, because between that and beating Clemson, Clemson hasn't had the greatest year, but if we can beat them on a year that we're not also having a good year, then there's a modicum of hope and at least a yeah in our state. And I'm hoping for that. But I'm really looking forward to next year, seeing what he can retain, and that really will speak to his culture and his ability to keep people. It'll speak a lot to his ability to coach. And that's my 2 cents, man.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Appreciate it as always. Hope you and the family are doing well. 803-404-6100. And you bring up a lot of good points there. And look, we've talked about a lot of negativity in the past 2 days, and rightfully so. That was a very crushing loss to A&M on Saturday, and Casey's right. That is, it's called an emotional roller coaster for a reason, because when you get off, you feel like you have gone through the ups and downs of being on a roller coaster. Maybe you're out of breath, your mind's kind of dizzy, and all those kind of things are very real, even if you're just sitting on your couch watching a game like that. But as Casey pointed out, he can be optimistic, at least, about the potential of big names returning. And I won't lie to you, I am nervous about how this portal cycle is going to go. Obviously, your biggest two guys are Lenore Sellers and Dylan Stewart. Now, Lenore Sellers has the option to go to the draft, too. That's something else you have to watch out for. But Dylan Stewart, as you would expect, is going to be courted by every major college football program to try and come play for them. And they're going to try and weaponize a bad season for Carolina against him, saying, hey, you don't want to be with these losers. Come play for us. We'll pay you X amount more money or whatever it may be, and we'll put you in a better spot to go to the NFL after your third season in college football. Those are conversations that are going to happen, right? And that's just the nature of where we are in college football as of today. And again, you're going to have to pony up the funds to keep some of that talent around, or a lot of that talent around, right? That's just how it is. Well, you don't have to like it. That's just the reality of where college football is as of today. So that's something that we're going to be monitoring closely as we get into the month of December and obviously into January in terms of who's staying, who's going, and then ultimately who you're bringing in, right? Because again, 2 seasons ago, Carolina had a phenomenal portal haul. We didn't know at the time. We looked at guys like Rocket Sanders and stuff, said, okay, yeah, that's promising because we knew what he had done at Arkansas, but we didn't think Kyle Kennard was going to come in here and be the guy that he was. We didn't know Demetrius Knight was going to come in here and be the guy that he was, and those guys played phenomenal years and obviously get their opportunities to play at the NFL level because of it, right? So you're hoping those kind of things happen too. And then you got to nail the OC hire at the end of the day, which that's probably going to be the first thing to be addressed in the offseason is who they're ultimately going to hire. And we can speculate till the cows come home. Hopefully it's somebody with a good college offense that can develop Lenore Sellers and get him back to being the quarterback that we know he's capable of being. But we'll obviously have to see on that. And Casey also pointed out that there is optimism about playing Clemson, right? And this isn't the Clemson of a decade ago that is rolling into that game 11-0 and ranked number 1 or number 2 in the country. They're having a struggle of a season too. Now they're a little bit better than you are right now in terms of record, but that's a game that very likely could be a toss-up, go back and forth. You got it at home. You haven't won at home in a long time in this rivalry. And again, even if just for that day, you might be able to have the reprieve of knowing that you beat your rival, which, to a lot of people here is something that can not make the season okay, because it's not okay, but can at least make you smile for a short period of time knowing you have the bragging rights over your rival for at least another year. And again, we'll get to more of what Coach Beamer said coming up here in a minute, but a lot of other things happening around college football, including the College Football Playoff Top 25, which is coming out later on tonight. Again, that'll be at 8:30 because they're doing the Champions Classic thing, so that game that announcement will be in the middle break between the 2 games. So we'll find out what the shakeup is. Now, again, if Carolina would have been able to hold on to win that game against A&M, we'd be talking about a significant shakeup. By the way, the Champions Classic coming up tonight. That first game will be Michigan State and Kentucky, and then Kansas and Duke will play after the playoff rankings come out at 9 o'clock. All that, of course, will be televised on ESPN. But A&M holds on to win, so I really don't expect any kind of shakeup when it comes to the top 3 in the standings. And I don't think the committee's going to hold it against A&M for being down by 4 touchdowns to a now 3-7 team. And I also don't think they're going to give them any style points for the comeback that they had because you're still behind 2 other undefeated teams in Ohio State and Indiana. So as far as those rankings go, I don't expect them to really move much, if anything at all. Where things get interesting, though, is with Alabama at 4 because they lost their second game of the season to Oklahoma, still in the driver's seat to make the SEC championship game because they only have 1 conference loss. Their other loss, of course, was to a now pretty bad Florida State team, but they're still sitting in good shape with all that kind of stuff, and they're not going to drop out of the top 10. I do think that you're going to have to put them behind Oklahoma because Oklahoma, A, has the head-to-head with the exact same record, and B, Oklahoma has a better win, which is Alabama. They don't have a better win because Alabama's better win is against Georgia, but their losses aren't as bad because Oklahoma has lost to Ole Miss and they've lost to Texas. Now, we'll see what Texas is in terms of the rankings and how far they fall after their loss to Georgia, but I expect them to be somewhere in the top 15 as opposed to Alabama, whose losses are to Oklahoma and then to a pretty bad Florida State team. So I do think that will ultimately, and head-to-head has to matter too, right? Well, if we can't have teams with the exact same records ranked one above the other, even though one beat the other, right? So I expect, and I kind of jotted down my general playoff expectations where, again, 1 through 3 unchanged. I think from 4 to 7, you just kind of have the case of teams moving up one slot. Georgia at 4, Texas Tech at 5, Ole Miss at 6, and Oregon at 7. Again, that's a one-spot jump for all those teams from where they were ranked from a week ago. And then I think maybe Oklahoma at 8 because they were coming in number 11. You beat the number 4 team in their house. That's worth something. You still only have 2 losses. I think you put them at 8. I think Alabama comes in at 9 because it was a tight game. It's not like you got your doors blown off. And then I think Notre Dame goes to 10. Now, Notre Dame beat, at the time, a ranked Pitt team, but their wins don't stack up to the wins of Oklahoma and Alabama. So I would expect that means that Notre Dame will drop down 1 spot to number 10. They'd still be in the college football playoff at that point in time, even if that's the case, which to them at this point, that's all that really matters. They may be going on the road for a game, and then it's like, okay, you're going on the road as the 6th seed to take on take on number 5 or whatever, or number 8, I guess. No. You be if you're the 6th seed, you'd be taking on number. No, if you're the 6th seed, you'd be hosting one of the number 11. That's right. Sorry, I'm doing the bracket in my head here. But can you move yourself up, and get yourself in the position to maybe get a bye? I don't think that's going to happen because you have 2 losses already. But you're trying to position yourself to maybe get a home game if you can be one of those top or teams ranked 5 through 8, which I don't know if you can. You're going to need some chaos in front of you. But for them getting in is the most important thing at the end of the day, and they're still very much in position to do that. I think Texas maybe falls to like 15th or something along those lines because they did lose by 4 scores to Georgia on Saturday. Could they fall below Vanderbilt? Because Vanderbilt's only got 2 losses, but Texas did win the head-to-head. I think that's going to be one of the interesting debates from Saturday, or coming up later on tonight. Could James Madison, could North Texas, could one of these G5 teams that wasn't ranked? Because again, last week was the first time any G5 was ranked, with South Florida popping in before they lost to Navy over the weekend. Could one of those other teams jump up in there and put themselves in position to make the college football playoff? It's going to be something that's going to be very interesting to see coming up tonight. And, of course, we're going to react to all this coming up tomorrow as well and see what the new bracket looks like for the college football playoff, as we're down to roughly the final 3 weeks before we have the bracket reveal on Championship Sunday. And then we're off and running into the first round at host sites, quarterfinals at bowl games, and semifinals there as well for the national championship game coming up in late January once again this year. We'll get back into what Coach Beamer had to say earlier on in the hour, or earlier on in the show, with his usual Tuesday presser coming up next as the halftime show. Tyler Red and Captain Dave rolls along in your Tuesday on the Game.
because that's what we owe it to them. Like, you know, what do you want us to do? Panic? Like, again, like this speech, I'm sure will come out at halftime, and everyone thinks this is this amazing speech at halftime. It's not. Like, we won that game 6 months ago with what we did in the winter. Like, we didn't win that game because I went in at halftime and said something. Like, we built a culture, we built a character, we built a commitment to doing things the way we want to do them back in January and February, and that's what came out in the second half.
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Ed and Captain Dave with you on your Wednesday. Here on the game, that is Mike Elko, head coach of the Texas A&M Aggies, asked yesterday about what inspired that comeback on Saturday. Was it some impassioned rah-rah speech in the locker room, or was it just how they're built? And he went with kind of the latter there, that, hey, we didn't win that game on Saturday because I fired the team up at halftime. We won it because we're conditioned, we're built, even if you don't have your best first half, to come back out in the second half and annihilate opponents, and that's what they've done a couple times this year. Did that to LSU a couple weeks ago that led to Brian Kelly being fired, and unfortunately for us, did that to South Carolina on Saturday too. And I think that's an interesting comment because, you know, you can win and lose games based on how your team is built through your offseason program. And, you know, seems like if A&M won that game because of what they did back in the winter, maybe Carolina lost that game because of what they did back in the wintertime. And that's something, in a way, that Coach Beamer was asked about in the last hour in terms of what makes a good fourth quarter team and what goes into improving on this. And here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I think from you know, it starts with, you know, all that stuff to me starts in the off season, January, February, all the things you're doing in the wintertime, in the summertime. You're building that mental toughness, that physical toughness for the fourth quarter, especially in this league where, you know, it's going to be a dogfight every single week. It starts with from a physical standpoint, making sure that you're fresh mentally and physically as you get into the fourth quarter, that your bodies are in position to go be at your best. And that's with the preparation that you have during the week, how you're taking care of your body. And then during the game, talked about it with our coaches on Saturday. It was 80 degrees out in Texas. We got to play our players and keep them fresh so we're fresh and at our best as we go into the fourth quarter. So all of that is really important. And then when you get into it, I think everything is magnified, and you've got to make plays and we got to execute. And that falls back on us as coaches. It starts with us in regards to putting our players in position to execute. But then whether it be, you know, A&M, Ole Miss, Alabama, LSU, all games in the fourth quarter that we had opportunities to win and we didn't get it done, there were plays where just frankly we didn't execute. The little touchdown pass to the running back out of the backfield against Alabama, we didn't execute. And the two long touchdown passes that they had in the fourth quarter, we didn't execute. And some plays that we missed in the passing game on offense, we didn't execute. And this ain't me sitting here blaming the players, they didn't do their jobs. I'm not saying that at all. It falls back on me and it falls back on us as coaches. But I think everything is magnified in the fourth quarter, and that's why I was 3 minutes late. I wasn't fighting Clayton. I was meeting with our leadership group, and that's what we were talking about, was just, you know, in the fourth quarter, we got to make plays. And it's you guys, particularly in this room, this leadership group, has got to go, you know, lead us and make plays. And I'm not saying they didn't. A lot of those guys made a lot of great plays on Saturday. We got to make more of them. And as coaches, we've got to, in crunch moments like that, we've got to do a better job of putting our players in position to make those plays and coaching them up throughout the week, so when those times come, we make them. And that'll be certainly something. I mean, we always do it in the off season in regards to the weight room and the off season program, but yeah, that'll be a big point of emphasis next year as we go into the season in regards to, you know, continuing to put our players in even more adverse situations where they got to communicate and be detailed at the end of weight room workouts, winter workouts, all that stuff like we do in the off season.
So when you're a team that's in the position Carolina's in right now at 3-7 and, you know, staring down, or not even staring down the barrel, you know for a fact you're not going to be making a bowl game going into an offseason, there's nothing that's off the table as far as evaluations are concerned when it comes to the people on your staff, when it comes to the way you practice during the season, or in this instance, as we're talking about relating to Mike Elko's quote, what you do in the offseason. And that can be as, you know, broad as, okay, what did we do on Tuesday practices during spring football back in April? to what's the team eating in the offseason? What's the conditioning look like in the offseason? All those things are subject to scrutiny when you have a season like Carolina has had. And I think back to 2 years ago now, when you had, I guess a year and a half ago now, coming off the 5-7. And one thing that Beamer talked about was the offseason conditioning, because 2023 was plagued with so many injuries. They wanted to look at what they were doing from a conditioning standpoint, a strength and conditioning standpoint. And I know they changed some things up. Going into the 24 season, they seem to work. Well, now you're back in that same boat of, okay, and yeah, you've had quite a few injuries, maybe not plagued to the same degree as you were a couple of seasons ago, but okay, you evaluate that. Are we doing the right things for this team to A, be healthy, and B, be tough, right? That's one thing that's been a common criticism of the offensive line that I'm sure was at the top of the charts of what Sean Elliott wanted to do when he took over that role was toughen these guys up, because they've gotten bullied so much on that offensive line so far this year, and that's not something that can happen overnight. Even with a bye week a couple weeks ago, to have time to really work with these guys, you can't suddenly make a team tough overnight. That is something that happens in February, March, April, the summer, the entire offseason. You can't just say, hey, guys, go out there and be tough or be more physical. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So that's something else, whether it be Sean Elliott is the offensive line coach or somebody else coming in here and guiding this team along. And with all that comes your ability to close out games, right? I know what this team is. It's a team that can't seem to finish out the fourth quarter of just about any single game so far this year. And look, if they got a 10-point lead on Clemson, with 13 minutes to go, my concern is, okay, this is where the wheels come off. This is where the team falters down the stretch, and how is Clemson going to come back and win this game? I don't want to think that way, but when I have enough of a sample size this season, I'm going to think that way, because that's kind of the identity, unfortunately, of what this team's done. It's a team that can't close. Didn't close on Saturday either. You had a big halftime lead, and by, 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, they were already ahead, right? So in 15 minutes of game time, they completed their comeback and very nearly punched in an extra touchdown to really make it a statement. They fumbled, gave you an opportunity, and obviously weren't able to do anything with that. But it's going to be an offseason of a lot of change. It's going to be an offseason getting back to the drawing board. And it's going to be an offseason of figuring out what you can correct and what needs to be corrected to try and get this team back on track. And you heard him in the presser last hour talking about, hey, this time next year, we expect to be, watching the Tuesday night ranking show knowing we're in and finding out about seeding or if we're hosting or go on the road or whatever it may be. That's confident talk. We'll see how it ages, right? It's the belief that a coach should have in their program, that they're always going to go out there and accomplish the top goal, because if you walk out there thinking you're the second best team, then you've already lost, right? So I don't mind that as much. I didn't love, again, the pump up going into halftime and what he said about A&M, but having a competent foresight speech a year out, we'll see how it ages, right? But I understand the confidence in those kind of things when Beamer does ultimately talk about them. So we'll see if he can figure out how to close. We will see if this team can figure out how to close, because it's going to be much needed, especially for coming up next year. And we'll see how they survive through these last couple games of the 2025 season. Been talking a lot today about the wild coaching carousel with James Franklin getting officially hired by Virginia Tech, Lane Kiffin, and what the heck's going on with him. Earlier on this morning on the Garner Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating, we had John Bryce on from footballscoop.com, who's been covering all of this, but more specifically the Lane Kiffin saga. Is he staying? Is he going? Well, what's the deal going to be here? I'll let you hear that conversation again coming up next as we continue on. It is the halftime show. It's Outhead and Captain Dave with you on your Tuesday on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head, Jack Beltry, and Chris Clark has made his appearance. Welcome in, Chris.
I'm here. Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, I came in hot this morning too, so it's okay. Not gonna knock you for that. Oh man, we've been talking about the crazy coaching carousel of college football already this morning, and now we'll bring in another voice to discuss it. That being John Bryce of FootballScoop.com, joining us now on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. John, appreciate your time. How are we doing today?
Doing well. It's a busy time of year, but always glad to visit with you boys.
Absolutely. We appreciate it. We were just talking about Lane Kiffin there in that last segment. I know you've been covering the sport for a long time. Is the Lane Kiffin saga, and will he stay? Will he go? Can you compare that to anything you've ever seen or covered before?
That's a good question. I actually was very involved on the University of Tennessee beat when he left for USC, and I actually staked out Lane in the UT indoor facility and got the first interview with him at like 4:30 in the morning as he was got a police escort out. He had to be escorted out by state troopers. That's the night that students had burned mattresses and all this crazy stuff on campus. And so I've seen the Lane Kiffin spectacle up close and personal. This is once again reminiscent of that, I would say.
John, it's Chris. Thanks for joining us, man. So it does seem like the 2025 version of Lane does seem different than that version. You know, almost 20 years later, maybe a more mature Lane. Yeah. But we've got some reports coming out that he's, sent his family to stake out, Baton Rouge and to stake out Gainesville. And there's it kind of seems like nobody really knows what he's going to do. I mean, do you have any sense? Is it truly like day to day, hour to hour? Do you have any sense if he stays or if he goes?
I talked to a member of the Ole Miss staff probably 10 days ago, and he was pretty confident that Lane was staying put. And I talked to more Ole Miss people in the last 48 hours, and that confidence is not remotely the same. And so I know that Layla was in Baton Rouge yesterday. I think Lane joined them on their travel Sunday to Florida. I think it is a little bit day-to-day right now. I think that the Ole Miss administration, as well as their fans and some boosters, might be, in Lane's eyes, overplaying their hands a little bit by trying to exert some pressure on him to make a decision right here and now, and to talk about, well, if you're leaving, just go ahead and leave, and we'll name an interim, and all of those things that are being discussed out there. So I think that we asked this question on the Football Scoop podcast on Sunday, maybe. And before Sunday, I had leaned that he was staying at Ole Miss. Now I think it's an absolute coin toss, and depending on what the Miami Dolphins do, I wouldn't even rule out him getting some NFL looks as well.
Hey, John, it's Jack here. Thanks for joining us. James Franklin getting hired by Virginia Tech. It seems like a really good move, one that could immediately work out and have a lot of success moving forward. It seems like also Virginia Tech's going to give him the funding necessary to put together a really strong roster. Your thoughts on the move and just how quickly Virginia Tech could be in the hunt for not just in the ACC, but in the playoff picture?
Yeah, good questions, Jack. And I think the last time I visited on this show, I discussed then that I thought James Franklin would be a really good fit for Virginia Tech. And I think that it's a strong move for the Hokies. It's interesting that they just fired his former defensive coordinator and then end up getting to hire him because Penn State had fired James Franklin. But look, I mean, it's been a while, but he was the head coach in waiting all those years ago at Maryland, and so he knows the DMV area, which Virginia Tech has to recruit well to be good. He obviously has recruited the Tidewater area before, which is another key region for the Hokies. Virginia Tech already had its leadership going before the state assembly and their board of governors or whatever their board of trustees is called 2 months ago, talking about how they've got to get $200 million in funding and secure that. And so I think he's coming in at a good time. And you guys know that right now, especially this year, the ACC to me is by far the worst of the four power conferences. There's a bit of a power vacuum there right now. There's great uncertainty at Florida State. So I think James Franklin is a good fit, a good hire, and hitting the ACC at a good time.
Again, talking to John Bryce, FootballScoop.com, about the ongoing coaching carousel in college football. And we're so fascinated by this one from the sheer amount of jobs that are open, but two, the high-profile ones that are available, Penn State LSU, Auburn, Florida, all those, just to name a few. Arkansas is still an SEC job. Oklahoma State in the Big 12. Like, the law of averages tell you that some of these hires are going to be hits. They're going to be successful and stay around for a long time. But some of them are going to be misses and going to be looking for head coaches again in probably the next 3 to 5 years. And again, this is so wide open right now. So many candidates out there. But who do you think is going to get this right and who do you think is going to get this wrong at this point in time?
Well, I think that certainly with Virginia Tech having already made the move, they're going to stand as one of the best hires in the cycle, in my opinion. Whatever anyone's opinion is on James Franklin and how bristly he can be, he did a lot of good at Penn State and won 34 games there in the last 3 full seasons before getting dismissed this year. So that's a good one. Florida and LSU have tons of resources, but LSU also has dysfunction that matches those resources. So Auburn's just sort of quietly going about its way. They've conducted some interviews. They talked to James Franklin. They talked to Eli Drinkwitz. I like John Summerall's chances there. I'm a big John Summerall guy. I think he's a great coach and would be a great fit. Especially with him having gone to high school in the state of Alabama. So that's one to watch. UCLA, nobody knows what they're going to do. Arkansas, this was shocking to me. I made this comment yesterday, maybe on radio or maybe on a podcast, and it was that Arkansas is right now about the least funded program in the SEC, even behind Mississippi State, which shocked me. But that's coming from inside the building at Arkansas, and that's coming from other coaches and personnel executives in the SEC. So Arkansas has got a lot to fix from that standpoint, from an NIL standpoint. I believe Arkansas could have hired a coach already if he had gotten satisfactory answers to their plan for NIL, and he didn't. So Arkansas' search carries on. And I still think there's probably 1 to 2 big dominoes out there yet to fall. I still think there are additional power conference moves that are coming.
So you're telling me the Walmart and Tyson chicken nugget money only goes so far?
Well, John Calipari seems to be getting the majority of that right now on his hoops roster.
All right, John, so let's go to Auburn. You mentioned John Summerall having good chances there. We always say Auburn is maybe the weirdest place in college football, whether it's the games they have, some of the coaching searches, some of the crazy things that have happened there. Is this an actual normal, quote-unquote, search for Auburn? It kind of seems that way this year.
Yeah, I think Cohen is doing a nice job, and I would, again, contend that certainly in this cycle, LSU has superseded the chaos. And trust me, Tennessee, I was at Tennessee a long time when Rocky Top lived up to every single letter of its name. So Auburn is quietly going about its business, probably because LSU and Florida are more high-profile jobs, but that doesn't mean that Auburn is not a really, really good job. And, yeah, I like the way that Auburn is conducting this search. It's also a much smaller media market overall than LSU or Florida, so that always helps a little bit fly below the radar. But it does seem that Auburn has a good system about it for this search and has some good people involved.
Got about another 2 minutes here, John. I think need to ask the localized question here. Just straight up, in your opinion, do you think Shane Beamer is at South Carolina next year, regardless of what happens the rest of this season?
I do. Now, a loss to Coastal Carolina would be really catastrophic because that's another program that's certainly evaluating its head coach and deciding which direction it wants to go for the future. But Shane's done a lot of good things there. He needs to nail this offensive coordinator hire, and he's got to retain his roster. It's something Chris and I have talked about. I know the vultures are circling. They're trying. People are already trying to start to pick apart some really talented players on that South Carolina roster. So he needs a win this week. He needs to batten down the hatches, so to speak, and gird against outside influences on his roster, and then he needs to nail the OC hire. And that's going to be the toughest of the three, in my opinion.
John, have you ever tried to explain the college football coaching carousel to people that don't pay attention to this sport?
No, I have not, and I would not envy those who do. So.
Well, John, we appreciate it as always, and I'm sure we'll be checking in with you as this crazy cycle continues to spin.
Yeah, no, I'm just glad Chris got there in time to visit with us. So you boys have a great day.
Absolutely. John Bryce there of footballscoop.com. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. It's all right, and Captain Dave wrapping up the hour here and the show, quite frankly, here on the game. Coming up next, Terry Ford going to be live from White Brown Smiles at 224 O'Neill Court here in Columbia, as they'll be working on a food drive for those in the community in need, and they recommend or request, if you're going to come by and drop some food off, non-perishable food items to help those in need. Again, Terry going to be out there from 3 until 6 and go hang out with him. Maybe you want to vent some of your frustrations from what happened on Saturday, much like we did yesterday out at Firehouse Subs. But again, Terry from 3 until 6 at White Brown Smiles at 224 O'Neill Court. That is suite number 13, and bring non-perishable food items if you do want to contribute. Then men's basketball in action tonight at 7 o'clock, taking on Radford. Pregame coverage starting at 6:30 right here on 107.5 The Game, and we'll react to that coming up tomorrow morning, as well as the college football playoff rankings, which come out tonight about 8:30 as well. You just heard our conversation with John Bryce of footballscoop.com, and since that conversation this morning, Lane Kiffin did go on the Pat McAfee show, and according to him, there is no ultimatum given to him by Ole Miss to decide something by the Egg Bowl or risk, him being moved on from, or I guess being told to go. I don't know how you'd phrase it exactly. Basically, the understanding was, and reported on by a lot of outlets, that Ole Miss wants an answer so they can kind of know, hey, if you're going to go, we need to start working on the next head coach hire, and maybe you just go ahead and go and take the job at LSU or Florida, whatever it may be, and then we bring in our new head coach and start working on the next plan. It's early signing day, portal, all that kind of stuff. According to Kiffin, and he could be lying through his teeth, that's not true. So he's focused on the task at hand, the whole thing, and all that. So this situation is very interesting. There does seem to be truth to the plane ride that his family took, at least, to Gainesville and Baton Rouge to look at things out there, whatever that's worth to you. I'm really interested in seeing this entire saga unfolding. Also yesterday, this kind of flew under the radar with everything going on with Lane Kiffin. Dave, we go back to today's cut list. This will be cut number 6. Desmond Howard, of course, of College Game Day, posted an interesting video on Twitter, just kind of walking around his front yard, and he dropped an interesting little nugget that could be quite an interesting ripple in the coaching carousel, if indeed it is true. And here's what he said.
Happy Monday morning, everybody. I'm here taking out this garbage. Had a couple of thoughts. One is, man, I miss the Twins. But as I'm walking past this tennis ball in my yard, I was also thinking, don't be surprised if that Texas job opens up at the end of the season. You guys were shocked when LSU opened up. Imagine how you're going to feel if that job in Austin pops open. I'm not calling or saying anyone's going to get fired. It may be a mutual parting of ways. You dig? Anyway, you guys have a great Monday.
Okay, well, there's a little bit more of the pot being stirred in this already chaotic coaching carousel. In case you're wondering, Chris Del Conte, who's the athletic director for Texas, responded to this saying, "This is news to me. Thanks for the insight," with the hand over the face emoji, basically trying to dispel this rumor that Desmond Howard is putting out there. There's always been conversation around Steve Sarkisian and his perhaps desire to jump up to the NFL. Of course, being in the NFL before, was a offensive coordinator with the Atlanta Falcons several years ago. Because, again, I don't know why he'd leave Texas for another college football job, because you've got resources galore when it comes to the Longhorns. But, and we saw this with Jim Harbaugh, right? He accomplished what he wanted to in college, won the national championship at his alma mater, no less. The one thing left for him to check was winning a Super Bowl. The Chargers job opened up after they fired Brandon Staley. They wanted Jim Harbaugh. He wanted to come back to the NFL, go to a place where he could get with a good quarterback, Justin Herbert, and turn him into a Super Bowl winner. Still working on it, but he's trending in the right direction as of right now, and we knew that he had that desire. So when he left Michigan after winning the national championship, and go into the NFL, nobody was really shocked by it. Again, not the same level of conversations have been had about Steve Sarkisian, but could you imagine if, with all these other jobs open, if suddenly Texas became open too? Now, again, I think Texas playoff hopes are probably dashed. We'll see where the committee ranks them coming up later on tonight. They do have the opportunity to knock off what would then be an 11-0 and possibly still number 3 ranked A&M team. We'll see if that would help them out. But I think their playoff hopes are over. I mean, if Sark wanted to jump, I guess this would be the time, right? Because he got the resources that he wanted, and he's come close to national semifinals appearances. I don't think that's going to happen this year because, again, I don't think Texas is going to make the playoff. But I don't know. Again, this coaching carousel cycle has been so wide open. I truly don't think anything is off the table at this point in time. And again, if Texas became open, I think that probably vaults to the number 1 job available in the cycle. I don't know. Maybe Lane Kiffin wants to wait on that one to open to see where he's going to ultimately decide to go. There doesn't seem to be as much credence to those rumors that Desmond Howard's putting out there. But, I mean, Desmond Howard is very well connected in college football. So I don't think he's saying something for the sake of saying something. He must have heard something from somebody, or at least enough people, to want to put that out there. And it's kind of one of those things to keep your eye on, right? Same thing with Lincoln Riley at Southern Cal. There's thoughts that maybe he could be interested in one of these big high-profile jobs, too, that would also open up a really big, really valuable job in L.A. if he does decide. I don't know. It's been entertaining. I'm glad we get to talk about it, and I'm waiting for the next domino to fall, whether it be Lane Kiffin or Sark or somebody else. Who knows? It's going to be entertaining to watch nonetheless. Appreciate all you guys weighing in today, listening to the show, calling in and all that. We'll get Bill back in here tomorrow, and we'll probably dive back in more into what Coach Beamer had to say and start projecting ahead. What's this offseason going to look like? Well, what's next? What do you got to do next? All those kind of things. So coming up next, Terry Ford live at White Brown Smiles at 224 O'Neill Court, collecting food for the community, and we'll be back in here tomorrow. So that'll do it for the halftime show. Tyler and Captain Dave on your Tuesday on the Game.